with there. I'm going to say a very few words of introduction as the chair of the Anglo-Israel Archaeological Society. My name's Sarah Pearce. For those who don't know us, the Anglo-Israel Archaeological Society was founded in 1961 by Richard Barnett, Yigael Yadin, Alec Lerner, and Leon Charlotte. We are a non-political, non-denominational cultural charity, and we welcome everyone who is interested in learning about the archaeology of Israel and the ancient Near East. Our focus is on sharing, indeed, on sharing the exciting archaeological world of Israel and the Near East from prehistoric times to the Ottoman era. Our activities include a regular series of lectures given by distinguished speakers, Steven Ortiz this evening, people exploring ancient sites, finds, cultures, and history. Other activities of our organization include our work in providing a program of travel grants, which we disperse in normal times to help students join archaeological digs in Israel, and also the publication of our international academic journal, Strata, which publishes original archaeological studies together with the latest news and book reviews connected to the archaeology of Israel and the Near East. If you're not already a member of the Anglo-Israel Archaeological Society, please do consider joining us. You will find a very warm welcome and many opportunities for engaging with the diverse world of the archaeology of Israel and the Near East. To find more about us, please check our website or follow us on Facebook or Twitter. You will also find our lectures published via our special YouTube channel available to members soon after the lecture and at a later date to the wider world. So to introduce our distinguished speaker for this evening, Steven Ortiz. Steven is the director of the newly established Lerner Center for Archaeology at Lipscomb University, Nashville, where he is professor of archaeology and biblical studies. Steven was the director of the former Tandy Institute for Archaeology at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, where a great deal of advances were accomplished. He is currently the principal investigator and co-director, together with Sam Wolf, of the Tel Gezer excavation project, and he is one of the directors of the Ilibalik project in Kazakhstan and the co-director at Tel Burna, or Biblical Livna, a very busy archaeologist and academic. Steven has over 30 years of archaeological experience working in Israel as a senior staff member at a variety of major sites. A major area of Steven's research and publications focuses on the archaeology of David and Solomon, and he will speak on the latter this evening. Another key area of contribution is his work on Iron Age 1 and 2 transition, and he is the co-author of a number of major publications of excavation reports on the Tel Mikne Ekron series, excavations 1994 to 1996, of which several volumes came out in 2022, and I understand a further one is forthcoming. We're looking forward very much to hearing about what you have to say, Steven. Thank you very much for the privilege of listening to you this evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for that nice introduction. And I want to thank the Anglo-Israel Archaeological Society for the invitation. I've always admired you all from afar, and I've, used Strata a lot. So it's nice to be in this prestigious company now. I have a lot to say, so I'm going to quickly get to my presentation. And just need to verify that you all can see my screen. Well, I'm assuming you are, unless you're going to stop me. Tel Gezer is an important site. Here it is within its larger region. It's probably one of the most important sites of the Northern Shrei, located at one of the most important crossroads, naturally the tradition of Via Maris coming up the coast, but also the access into the hill country through the Beth Horon Ridge. It's an ancient city mentioned in several historical texts. Basically, if you're an Assyrian or an Egyptian and you're coming through, you had to conquer Gezer at some point. And as you can see here, as it sits in the Ayalon Valley, there are excellent resources. So you can see why this site was continuously occupied throughout its history. The site itself was about 33 acres or 13.3 hectares. It has two hills, the western hill, the eastern hill, and a saddle in between. And the southeast is off the top of the aerial here is where the spring is located. And these two hills have pretty much determined the occupation of the site throughout its history. Mentioned the biblical text, the accounts in Joshua, you have the king of Gezer organizing the Canaanites against Joshua. It was the tribal allotment of Ephraim. It later became a Levitical city, possibly in Danite territory. Location of major battles between the Israelites and the Philistines. And then naturally the most infamous account is Gezer in First Kings 9:15, where we have mentioned that the Pharaoh gave it to him as a gift, and Solomon fortified Gezer. It has a long history of excavations. 1902 to 1912, you have McAllister, you can see here in the yellow. He's pretty much excavated about 40% of the site. You had Rowe in 1934. My colleague Sam Wolf just came up with the major excavation of Alan Rowe's excavations in 2021. And then naturally you have HUC excavations, Hebrew Union College under Deaver and eventually Joe Sager. And you can see the various fields here where they've opened up. One of the issues is this is the advent of the new archaeology, at least in America. And you can see the emphasis on these large trenches, field 1, field 8, field 2, field 9. And then ourselves, our new Tandy excavations, I don't want to talk about. But just to give you an overview, everywhere we dig, we have the remnant or the ghost of R.A. McAllister. Here you can see how he excavated the site in 20-meter strips and trenches. We'd excavate one trench, and then he dumped the dirt back in from another trench that he's digging. So you can see this would mess up a lot of the stratigraphy of the site. And my colleague Sam Wolf has edited a volume on not just the excavations at Gezer, but all of our A. McAllister's, and you can see it here, one of the PEQ monograph series. The Americans came to Gezer, as I said, in 1964 under Bill Deaver, Hebrew Union College excavations. I always like to show this slide to my students because when they complain about our kibbutz dining or digging, I say, well, back then, my doctor father, they lived in tents on the site. And this is how they lived without air conditioning, without a kibbutz swimming pool, without the kiosks to go get the various evening beverages, etc. So everything was done here on the site. And interesting fact, my co-director, Sam Wolf, was a student here. And so he has fond memories. He tends to lead our student groups at the beginning of the year. And Sam will take them through the camp, the remnant of the camp, point out his tent and other activities that were done. Here's where you can see the HEC excavations and the various trenches. This is important because when Sam and I came, we wanted to, we were addressing several issues. Before I get that, I just want to thank our consortium members, those schools that sent students, sent funding. I also want to thank Southwestern Baptist Seminary. They were the major donors for the project, but they got a new pharaoh who did not know Joseph, so they cut the Tandy during Katrina. And I was very fortunate that Lipscomb University pretty much picked up the whole academic program, the whole research program, and now the publications are under the Lanier Center for Archaeology as Sam and I finished the research on the project. All this material. Here we are, as I say, younger man, but in the labs at HUC, and this is when Sam and I were formulating our research design. We're looking at what Hebrew Union did, some of the results that they found, and where we developed our design. 2000, big issues in Iron Age archaeology, state formation processes, border between Judah and Philistia. I've worked on Philistine sites. I was interested in this interplay. Naturally, low chronology was a hot topic, and Iron Age ceramic chronology, urbanization. And Gezer is one of these key sites that we felt could address all these research issues. One of the things we did, or that was part of our research design, is trying to connect our new project with fields of the old project. Here you can see field 3 of the HUC and field 7. This is where Sam worked as a young student. And we were purposeful in our field so that stratigraphically we touch parts of previous excavations so we can compare our stratigraphic data with previous data. As a new excavation, we did not want to be influenced. People assume that we're Bill Deaver students and we're just out there to support our Bill Deaver. That's not the case. You're going to see Bill Deaver was right, but Bill Deaver was also wrong. All right, here's an overview of the two fields. Naturally, we continued a large sondage. We wanted to get a whole history of the site, all the way from the Middle Bronze Age up to the Hellenistic period. At this area, the Hellenistic was already excavated, but we had some Hellenistic occupation here in Persian. And then in our field east, where we're trying to get this broad historical exposure, the stratigraphy of basically what we thought would be the administrative center, all those, the occupation west of the city gate. Naturally, we have over 14 strata. The HUC excavations had 26 strata, but they naturally went all the way to the early Bronze Age. I'll talk more recently, but we have good C14 dates, but here you can see the various levels of analysis, the C14 analysis, the various architectural features on the top from the Middle Bronze Age all the way up to Assyrian destruction in the 8th century. And then naturally pulling it all together, you can see where we're tying in our excavations with the previous excavations and the various strata. We have a couple other auxiliary projects. One was the Gezer survey project led by our colleague Eric Mitchell. You can see some of the area that was explored, mostly the hinterland. Halfway, well, toward the end, they met a farmer, and the farmer basically told them that in the 1960s, they hauled in a lot of dirt from other regions to help refertilize this area and the fields. And so we realized that most of the pottery that they're collected could be mixed from various areas. But nevertheless, they helped contribute to some of the hinterland, mostly the water systems, vats, etc. But Persian Hellenistic period, naturally the boundary stones of Tel Gezer. But that's for another lecture. Gezer is well known in the Middle Bronze Age. The HUC excavations really exposed some of this level, particularly the Middle Bronze Age gate, massive fortifications, the tower with the four-chambered southern gate, the water system, and naturally the infamous standing stones. This is the those that go to Gezer. This is a famous feature at the site here. You can see even for the ATV, the four-wheel drive kids from the local kibbutz and the settlements would come driving their ATVs here. We were part of the National Parks Authority to try to stop them and put up boundaries here. And while I was down at Tel Gezer, Sam gave me a call. He was up in Jerusalem. He said, Gezer's on fire. And naturally, we had some of my students. So what do? We brought the drone and we took aerial pictures to see. It's nice that, I mean, it's not nice that we had a fire here, but you can see that it burnt down almost all of the overgrowth here. And so we did do some survey and exploring, but like just one aerial picture shows that the standing stones, even, 4,000 years later, even within the fire, you can still see them standing there. You can imagine during the second millennium, this was a feature that can be seen from far away. Second auxiliary project was the water system. This was not part of our project. This was the National Parks Authority and New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. Naturally, some of their staff were part of Sam's and Mine project. They moved over, and this was a separate project. But you can see the results where they're able to tie in the water system to the Middle Bronze Age tower, buildings, Middle Bronze Age gate. And one of the, Sam and I think one of the sad features is the National Parks Authority is trying to make this a nice tourist attraction, but they're removing a lot of McAllister's dumps, and it's kind of changing the, well, it's McAllister's dumps are also part of the archaeological record. So, but I won't get into modern archaeological politics in Israel, but that's where our site is. Naturally, everywhere on the site, this was not a part of our research design, but as we went down our sondage, you can see the we confirmed the Middle Bronze Age glacis went all around this. At least here we have evidence in the southern central part, and you can see the glacis. And here's a picture. Student up here in red shirt is at our Iron Age levels, and then here's a student in the turquoise is down here in our Middle Bronze Age levels as we go down through history, just a section of what we exposed. Ironically, Gezer is archaeologically not much is known in the late Bronze Age. We were interested in this. You had the Amarna letters, you had Tutmosis III, you had so much mentions of Gezer in Egyptian campaigns and sources that we're looking for this occupation. And up to this point, when Sam and I came, most of what we knew about the late Bronze Age was from this sondage by the Hebrew Union College excavation, just this one woman. I'm not talking about the excavator, I'm talking about this matriarch in the tomb. It just is one tomb dated to the LB1 period. And most people, when they're studying the late Bronze Age at Gezer, they go through McAllister's. We have the pottery, we know it's a rich site, but most of it has been removed or not excavated. So Sam and I were very fortunate that under our Iron Age, we were able to add to the story of the late Bronze Age at Gezer, and we've uncovered this large Albi patrician house. Just to show you how close it is, this wall line here is part of the Iron Age wall line system, part of the Iron Age wall line system here. And you can see just beneath the Iron Age occupations, we have this nice late Bronze Age building. Our probably nearest plan is at Tel Gezer. They have a late Bronze Age patrician house. Here are several ones from various sites, Tel Gezer, Megiddo. But you can see this second millennium plan of this governor's residencies, a patrician house, but it's the typical Middle Eastern courtyard house, the large courtyard and rooms around it. We have something similar here, but you can see the plan there. You can see the various rooms. In ours, we have an installation, a remnant of a flagstone surface. We kind of think that this might be the courtyard here, but if it's fitting the plans, room A should be the central room and things around it. Room A, you're going to see we've had several installations found there. But one of the things we found with this, with our excavations here, going back to the slide here, you can see the southern part of this building has fallen low. This is due to erosion, so we can assume that the building would have extended. But these are just our dotted lines of the extension. And Deaver, Deaver has postulated that the LB encircled the city. we have not found evidence for any Albi city wall. If there was, the assumption would be like other sites, they would have just reused the MB wall, would have sat around here. But just to show you, we're already down the slope. There's no room for a city wall to encompass the late Bronze Age building at this point. And here you can see a section of what I'm saying. We have the MB city wall right here. The MB city would have extended under this Albi city. A patrician house that already would have extended over this slope. There would have been no room to build a city wall, or if you built a city wall, would have been down here and it wouldn't have protected the city. So coming back to this patrician house, we first started finding evidence of this house down here in field room C. And it was actually as we were just excavating the glacis of the Iron Age fortification system here. And sure enough, we found, a scarab of Amenhotep III, a cylinder seal. And this was Mitanni seal. Anyway, Sam and I realized this was an important building and we're wanting to expose most of it. So that sat for 3 or 4 seasons. But every now and then, as we're excavating going down, basically we now know this room was probably some type of industrial room. We first did a probe and we found this, what we thought was a Albi pillar. And naturally we thought, oh, this is one of these nice patrician houses of the Albi period. But what this pillar turned out to be was a disc-shaped stone installation. Well worked. You can tell they were grinding something or using a roller. We did find a couple rollers in this room with this one vat. And so some type of insulation here with store jars. It's a workroom at this point. This is just a slide to show you all of our finds. The Reshef cylinder seal, this bifacial rectangular plaque with the barrel-shaped top. We have Tutmos on one side. On the base, we have Ramses II. Our scarab expert, Baruch Brando, informs us that this is a typical 19th century product commemorating the names of the great kings. And I've already showed you the scarab and actually bronze weapons. And a picture, we have local Canaanite pottery, imported Mycenaean and Cypriot, some within the house, but naturally a lot of this from various fills throughout the site. And this patrician house was destroyed. Here's a picture of our Iron Age wall built directly on top of the destruction. You can see the fired mud brick. When the Iron Age 1 people came, they saw this destroyed house and they just built right on top of it. And, I guess the destruction was secure enough that they could just put their foundation walls on top of it. But everywhere where we excavated, you can just see the collapse of the stones that fell in. Here's another on the courtyard one, just these stones with in the midst of the mud brick destruction. Our last season, we spent time removing the destruction, collecting the artifacts, and to our surprise, we found a body. Here you can see this one individual and a second individual here. And the body was so burnt that we pretty much could not collect the bones. So as we were sweeping and cleaning it up, we pretty much removed the remnant. But here you can see, here's the skull. You can see the remnants of the skull. But as we brushed it away, it was like ash. Almost just post. So we didn't get much information, but we do know from our osteologists that this is a female. And then the second individual here, we had more parts of their body. This is a child, a youth. And it appears that they were in the midst of the destruction here. I showed you an earlier slide with all the stones. We removed all the stones. Those stones sealed this mother and child, or I'm assuming it's a mother and child. And 2017, we were done. It's just published this. And naturally, your final photos, you sweep for the final photos. And this is our bulk that we left for the season. And one student was cleaning the stones here. And he said, one of these stones is not part of the cobble surface. This is a head. And right here, we had this individual here. You can see the stones around it. We thought we were excavating the cobble surface, but as it was brushed and cleaned up, we knew we had a head. We already finished. We took our final photographs, but we don't want to leave this individual here. So you can see where we just did an emergency cut through the bulk. After we drew the bulks, we just excavated this part to remove this individual. So we pretty much had 2 days around the clock excavating and removing this one individual. And this one individual turns out to be a male. And you can see in the midst of the destruction, he's in a fetal position. And we're not sure if the walls came down on him and he's in the midst of the rocks or if it happened after. I keep changing my story. I talk about a father and mother coming in for their child. Sometimes I talk about a father who abandoned a woman and a child. I don't know if they're connected. All we know is we have 2 adults, one over here in room D as he came out this entrance here, and this female and youth. We're talking about like 11, 12, give or take. Naturally, we've, based on historical dead reckoning, the date of the pottery, the scarabs, the historical source of Merneptah, destroying Gezer, we naturally associate this destruction with Merneptah. We have the popular account of this last summer in Biblical Archaeological Review, so you can read about it there. But you know that Gezer was part of his campaign. You have 2 different theories of where he went after Gezer, and I showed you both of them here. But I won't get into Merneptah's campaign here. We just know that this is probably the reference to this destruction of Merneptah himself. After this destruction of this patrician house, just one single room of it was rebuilt, Unit D. Just a rectangular single-story building with a divider wall here. And here we have a seti, the second, a 2-sided plaque found within this level here. So late Bronze Age, destroyed by Merneptah. And then we have this built of just part of the patrician house there into a 1-room building. On top of this, this building goes out of use, and the Iron Age 1 period, about 1150 BC, based on the pottery, and now our C14, we have a series of rebuilds. It's the same building, we just have a couple remodelings, but it goes from 1150 to 950. And here you can see the first phase. What's consistent is we have 4 units built against an exterior wall of the building. This wall is built on top of the MB Glacis and the Albi Patrician House. It's in line with the Iron Age wall, and I'll come back to that when I talk about the Iron Age. But it looks like these units were consistent, they were built, and then the building structure north of these units shifted. And so here we have a large room, various side rooms throughout. And one of the unique features is, well, domestic quarter, we have tabbouleh ovens here, sunken storage jars, plaster surface, a domestic structure. But one of the unique things, we have lamp and bowl deposits, but we also have, we call them hidden juglets, foundation deposits. In the corners of walls at the bottom, it's just juglets sunken beneath the plaster floor level. We have 3 of them, and we also have the typical lamp and bowl deposits of the Iron 1, early Iron Age 2 period. At Mikne, at Ekron, we had these in the Babylonian destruction, where we'd have these little jars but they were full of silver ingots and gold. And this is what people, I originally got excited thinking these were people were hiding their goods, but we probably assume it's some type of foundation deposit for the building itself. Here you can see the complete picture, the juglets, other lamp and bowl foundation deposits. Here you can see pictures of lamp and bowl deposits, a typical Iron Age one, and a unique one where we had unfired bowls with the lamp in the center. Some of them had chalices associated with them, but again, various finds. So this is the domestic unit. A shout out, this is my son who was excited to find one of these. And then this building gets remodeled. You can see some of the issues we have. This is destruction debris later on, but beneath it we have a threshold and a pillar. It's in the bulk system here. But here you can see where we have this remaking. That room A that I told you about is divided in half. It becomes room B, and it becomes this little section over here. We're not sure how to define this. Naturally, archaeologists, the classic is if you can't define it, it's Cotic. But we have new pillars here, a street, so there's access from the street into this part of the building. Room B becomes another building through this entrance to this threshold. So they shifted the unit. So this becomes one unit, AC, with these storage rooms, and then B becomes another unit. This is again remodeled, and then just this one unit of the AC. We had a pebbled hearth or a bin here. This is removed and becomes room D, and another entrance from room D. And so a lot of this subphasing, these remodeling, but the final phase of these Iron Age 1 series of room shifts and additions, this one was destroyed. And the distribution of finds, we have rattles, we have figurine fragments. We assume that this is carrying on this cultic nature of this pillared room. But as you know, even in domestic structures, we have evidence of cult and cult space. And so that's all we can say about it. Storage rooms continue. And in these storage rooms, we found, I'll come back to this, but a mushroom-shaped stopper, which is very common. And naturally, this layout is a little bit different. We talk about these Canaanite storeroom, courtyard houses that continue. Here you can see some that date to late Bronze, late Iron 1 period. We have the Gezer ones up on the Acropolis of HUC excavated. These are nice, classic. The northern house, the northwest house, good courtyard houses. We assume these were nicely built. These were probably the rich people up on the Acropolis. And then perhaps we've excavated the poorer ones, they're remodeling it. But here you can just see our plans here. Here's a close-up of the HUC elite houses. And naturally, throughout this period, we don't have the Philistine one, earlier Philistine periods, but we have the bichrome. And so we have the bichrome and fills also within these series of houses. And we have this interesting text in the Bible where David is establishing his kingship up on the top. And there's a battle, the Philistines come up, and he chases them from Gibeon to Gezer. And at that point, they stop the pursuit. We're not postulating that Gezer's Philistine city, but they're at least in cahoots with the Philistines. Naturally, down the Arlon Valley, they're right there in the Philistine heartland. So there's some connection here. And I think that this is part of the recent theories of a Canaanite enclave from Bet Shemesh going down. We think Gezer is part of this westward expansion of the Canaanites there, but they would have been quite comfortable with the connection with the Philistines. Everywhere where we dug this building, we find storage jars and destruction. And you can see students, they're happily excavating it. And then just, we can see the final plan of where all the storage jars were found. 3 of them built up against this wall. Basically, each unit had several of these storage jars. Room 3 was a rich storage room. We had several storage jars in there, but several jar stoppers. Naturally, a multi-handled crater. Sam was reading an article that some of these stoppers have stamped seals on them. And because these are just common everyday items, we just collected them, recorded them, put them in our lab. So naturally, after this article, Sam went and pulled out our storage jars and looked at them. And sure enough, one of them had a stamp. And here you can see a close-up of this stamp seal. The article was our colleague Stefan Munger, Egyptian stamp seal amulets and their implications. And so sure enough, this stamp fits into this period of Egyptian stamp amulets. We've associated some of called these Siamon seals, but it's just this one period after that. They're not necessarily Siamon. We do have one in Abdor that has Siamon's name. And then on top of this city, I'll move to what I want to talk about. We have a brand new city, city planning, administrative structures, fortifications. This is built on what we assume was these domestic buildings, and naturally, I say equals Solomon, but we're not letting the Bible dictate what we find. It's just we have historical references there, and we can see that there's a new administration in town, and they come and they built a large administrative building, a pillared structure, and naturally this new 6-chambered gate that HUC knew about. And so here's the HUC excavations, the classic 6-chambered gate. And HUC excavated some of the fortifications. Deaver had a 1984 excavation, a 90 excavation, where they excavated the casemates. Ironically, McAllister excavated all this, and so everything was empty. We went back and re-excavated, and it was just fortunate this number 12, 1984, Deaver was able to find 8th century and a 10th century level in there with pottery there. But pretty much McAllister left that for him, but everything else has been removed. We are working on the fortifications. Our colleague Gary Arbino is the one writing up the monograph on this. But you can see, it appears we were looking for the extension of the casemate. One of the theories was that Gezer was occupied during the 10th century, only this one period, and that there was kind of like Samaria, this casemate structure built around it. Sam and I were testing that theory and investigating it. We do find that the wall goes all the way around, but it looks like the casemate was only for the extension for about 20 meters on each side of the gate structure here. And we didn't know it at the time, but we're finding this is becoming the administrative center. Casemate only went for a certain part of just west and east of the gate. And then as it continued up the slope, it probably became a single wall line. And we can see the single wall line here. What's funny is in our earlier excavations, we thought these were all part of, a subterranean structure to support the gate system as it came up the hill. But we realized that this was actually part of the Iron Age 1 buildings that we see here coming out. We did one probe to see how far down the walls went, and this is where we thought we found the late Bronze Age pillar, which turned out to be this installation there. So right beneath this wall line is where we have this LB patrician house. Here you can see it's realigned. It turns up the slope. And this is a 9th century rebuild, the red. And then we have an 8th century rebuild. And you can see it over here on this wall here. So the Iron Age fortifications have a long history of being rebuilt, refortified. And here's another view of it. Here's our late Bronze Age patrician house peeking out. We're still in the Iron Age 1 series of buildings here. And then the Iron Age 1 wall. And then the Iron Age 2 wall that came here. And we removed part of it so we can excavate down below it. And so you can see this series of wall lines. Iron Age also had a glacis, earlier MB glacis, but then you have an Iron Age glacis on top. And you can see the various phasing of this fortification system. When we put it all together, we can see that the city rises up. If you go onto a surface here at the gate, and you on a 10th century surface over here, there's about 3 meters of slope. And you can see this cutaway here that Gary's presented here. I'll come back to this when I look at the administrative building. One of the main things we found during the 10th century was this large administrative building abuts the casemate. Deaver found part of it. He already did probes. We call this Deaver's bathtub, but it's just one water installation. So he already exposed part of it. It's part of his palace 10,000. Now we know we're able to put it within its larger architectural context, and it's part of these central courtyard buildings with several entrances. You have one entrance coming from the gate complex, smaller side entrance here, and then one from the west, from the other part of the city. We're familiar with these Iron Age 2 palaces, administrative buildings, various assumptions of their origin. Naturally, it was the Bet Helani type with the central courtyard. Here's one from the Zinjirli. But then we have the Megiddo one, a couple from Megiddo. Several of these have been analyzed. Recent research, Sharon and Zarzeki Peleg have called these podium structures with lateral axis. Anne and Gunnar looked at Palace 6000 at Megiddo, and they come up with the central tetrapartite residencies. Sam and I weren't going to come up with our new name for this, but we just know that it's some type of concept with these central courtyards, central courtyards with rooms built around it, and ours is part of this tradition. Ours is somewhat different, so we think some of these were more influenced from the north, and we might already have a southern tradition of the central courtyard, or it could just be the nature of the double hills and where they placed this courtyard, which is central courtyard building, which is next to the gate. But here you can see the various components of it. Casemate fortifications. There is no access into the casemates from the central courtyard administration. We have an open area here, and then a pillared structure that we thought was all connected. And our last season, we expanded north, and what we found was this monumental pavement. Massive destructions, large stones. Here's the administrative wall of the building. This is room 2 of the building, but just to give you a perspective, this was just full of these large boulders. It took us a couple of seasons to slowly remove them, excavate them, take out the stones. And we kept telling students, this is a good sign because the destruction means that everything was sealed at the bottom. When we get to the floor, we're going to find all these a nice destruction. we did not find a nice destruction. We found a destruction, but we didn't find anything. A lot of nice, beautiful plaster surfaces. Here you can see one in the courtyard. This room dividing wall, ashlars tipped over from the destruction. We kept some of them there for future reference, but you can see pretty much everything was cleaned out. Taboons. These are the two rooms where we have remnants of the fiercest destruction, this tumble. But these rooms were beautiful plaster surfaces, corners, ashlar masonry in the blocks. We have ashlar masonry all around in this building. But these rooms were literally empty. This is a pristine plaster surface there. Sometimes we're fortunate. Here we found a game board top. Our conservator called it ivory. Sam and I published it in different publications as an ivory lid. And as it's being further analyzed, it's probably not ivory. It is bone, but it could be from a cow or bull scapula. So here's our what we thought was an ivory lid with the rosettes, game of 20 squares, but it's probably a cheaper cow scapula. So there goes our whole vision of Solomon and his splendor of ivory, etc. And it's just a common bone. But throughout all these rooms, we'll find a bracelet, we'll find a rattle under the destruction. You can see where I'm going with this. Parts of figurines. It looks like this administrative building was cleaned out. They knew somebody was coming. They were moving all the storage facilities, and in the process of cleaning the University of Texas graduate. The mascot for Texas are the Longhorns, and he naturally had to connect this as a Longhorn, but this Longhorn does not connect to, these are two separate figurines there. Being a Texas Longhorn graduate, you had to make sure it looked like. We do find pottery, 10th century pottery, black, a red slip. The one or two cooking pots that we find are good 10th century forms, red slip burnished throughout the building. So we do have a collection of pottery that we can date to the 10th century. But this is our final area here. A nice stone pavement. This would have been the continuation of the street from the Iron Age 1 period. They're still placed in the same area coming down the western slope here. And as people came and they got close to the administrative center, you can see it's nice pavement. And we assume that this would have went to the plaza or the piazza that just would have been north of the gate. It's just some there, and here's some more pictures of it. We have steps, so you can see the steps going up. I mentioned that's at least 3 meters from one side of our excavation to the other as they would have walked up. Here's the courtyard, the administrative courtyard building. Here's that one little entrance coming from the street. I don't know if you can see it here. We should have students here. But here you are coming from the western hill, walking on down to the gate and the exit of the city, which we would have assumed there would have been a larger piazza or plaza here outside of the gate. Here's a close-up of the steps that we have here. And then just an example of this going up the slope here. In the administrative building, here's one plaster surface. The next building, a domestic unit, it goes up another meter. We have a cobbles building over here dating to the same time period. And you can see visually with the 3 staff members standing in each building, how much it goes up the slope. And naturally, this is, most of this is dump, but this would have been the parts of the Western Hill that I showed you earlier on in the slope there. One of the unique features, we kept calling this an administrative building. We assume that there was like a courtyard, and then you had this, we jokingly called it the soldiers' barracks. It was just the building next to it. Here's the plan of the building. And recently, Yossi Garfinkel, excavating the level 5 study at Lachish, found this same phenomenon up against the gate. You have several houses, one room structure with a line of pillars in between. We have the same type of unique function. This is not an Israelite 4-room house, but we might have a new house type here in the Shvei La, starting here from Gezer, going all the way down to Lachish. We're seeing in the 10th century here. They have similar houses at their excavations at Khirbet al-Rai. So it's a new, this is where the domestic structure starts in the city. We do have an article coming out in Biblical Archaeological Review, Solomon's Power Play, Gezer's Royal Complex. So Sam and I have this. This is thanks to Ling Rittmeyer. We had him do a reconstruction. He did the original HUC Solomonic gate reconstruction. And so now we've added our administrative building to it, and now the domestic building where the domestic quarter starts. And Ling did a good job of trying to show the steps going up to the Western Hill. Everywhere where we saw, we excavated in the rooms of this building, massive destruction. And naturally, we think we can postulate that this was the Pharaoh Shishak destruction that we have in text, the biblical text, but also possibly in the Shishak inscription. There's a debate between Egyptologists if it's Gezer or if it's Gaza. And unfortunately, the city name for Gezer is eroded away. But we think it's a good case that somebody came, the local governor knew the city was going to be destroyed, emptied the administrative building. On top of this administrative building, here you can see earlier phase of the administrative building, but this is all domestic units built on top. So no longer is this an administrative city of the 10th century, but at the end of the 10th century, and we're thinking it was the 9th century, but now our C14 dates are placed in this building, our Unit D, as end of the 10th century. The city administration left, and now next to the gate, everybody came and built their own houses, and it became a domestic quarter. You can see the various units here. The 6-chambered gate became 4-chambered gate. This is according to the HUC excavations. And so we can see this one short-lived time period of Gezer being an administrative center, second half of the 10th century, then went out of use. And then it doesn't pick up until the 8th century, where we see a new rebuild where we have Judean pottery. And this is probably under King Uzziah. But you can just see some of our examples of publications. Naturally, our big C14 article came out. Other ones, or Sam and I have published on the late Bronze Age, but also our recent one on the 10th century Gezer. And so we think we have evidence of this one Judean king establishing and moving westward, and Gezer was its most westward expansion. After that, the kingdom was weakened, and then Gezer goes back to being probably occupied by just the local Canaanite population in this region. And so thank you all.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for a wonderful lecture. We have a question already from Donald Kane. Have you considered using archaeomagnetics to date the destruction layers?
Yes, we do have samples. I forget the student's name. She Tallahassee, University of Michigan, one of Jeff Blakely's students, has taken very sensitive, but yeah, it has to come from these taboons. So we do have we've done the research. We're waiting for the scholar to tell us, what they found on it.
And then another question, is there any evidence of multi-story buildings?
We don't have, some sites you have the ground floor destruction and you have an upper layer destruction. The only ones that we have of that is our 8th century Assyrian destruction in our 4-room house, where we have 2 layers where we can tell, we had an upper floor with pottery on it. One of the problems is these would have been cleaned out or shaved off. And so this administrative building, there would have been a series of rubble that they just would have reused that rubble to build these domestic structures, and they would have just kept the rubble beneath it at some point. And so if there was 2nd story, it would have been removed with the new occupation. So no, we don't have any evidence of. We can assume it based on the heights of the remaining wall. But no, we don't have a nice stratigraphic destruction of a 2nd story.
And there's a comment from the same questioner saying, thank you, I wondered about the administration building as a multi-story building. Could I ask Stephen a question? What were the means of destruction, as far as you can tell? What was the process for destroying these buildings? Is it possible to say?
The late Bronze Age one, because we have bodies in it, we have to assume there's violence, for it. And so that's why we think more naphtha. But we don't have HEC. Now, granted, they just dug in sondages, so they didn't have a wide late Bronze Age exposure like we did. But it looks like, and this is from others who are looking at these Egyptian campaigns, that they might have just destroyed a central part of the building. And I think the same thing with their administrative building, that the only reason they destroyed the administrative building was to make a statement. One, that they can't come back to the building, or that they're, Shishak came by and just destroyed evidence of a government type structure. And so it's more of a statement and not trying to destroy the city itself.
Thank you.
Yeah. One of the questions with Gezer is we do have evidence of an earthquake in the 8th century.
Oh.
And so in the 1990 excavations, and we think one of our students is working on this, he did the 4-room house of our 8th century, that this might be Amos's earthquake. And that those who are studying destructions, the nature of destructions, big debate. Megiddo has a debate, where is the earthquake? Is it earthquake or human? But at Gezer, we have evidence. Can you see me, like of walls that are just shifted off of each other, which is a good earthquake,
right?
Evidence of earthquake.
Yeah. Thank you. We have a question from Elizabeth Freed. What are the dates of Philistine occupation at the site, and what are the dates of Israelite occupation?
Well, going off our C14 and our ceramic analysis, our Iron Age 1 is 1150 to 950. And we have this building was rebuilt and reused. So it's the same people occupying it. And we have bichrome. We don't have the earlier monochrome. So if we're basing it just off of Philistine relations, and this would have been with trade or, Philistines coming, because Gezer only has like 5 to 10% Philistine bichrome pottery. Our later stuff in our 10th century, we have the lapidus or the Ashdod ware earlier on, and this is our 10th century Philistine, which is the red slip with the black painted. And so we have 10th century of the Ashdod ware. But by then, this Ashdod lapidus ware, I'm using the Aaron Mayer's new term now, major publication. These are found at good Judean sites. So by then we already have trade, and it's not so much an ethnic marker as we see of the bichrome and the earlier monochrome. Is that good, Liz?
Is that, are you happy with that, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
As much as possible, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Stephen, can you tell us any more about the cult figurines? Were they particularly unusual? Anything unusual about what you found, or standard?
No, it's standard. It's the Astarte plaque. The goddess with the buffoon hair. In our LB level, she looks more LB, and we have the one in the administrative building. So based on the shifting iconography, they fit.
Yeah.
But there's we can't identify the god or goddesses, just what others have identified us.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any further questions? If not, I will hand over to Professor Hugh Williamson, who is going to give the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Steve, so much. Gezer, of course, we know has featured very prominently in quite controversial matters about chronology and dating and so on, and you've not taken us into the depths of that at the formal level, but in fact have shown by your very careful work on a small area that by patiently building up the picture you've presented to us so nicely this evening, that one paradigm seems to fit, and it would be difficult to see how you'd shift that. So I think it's been a model in a positive presentation of evidence without being sidetracked by what I think you called it archaeological politics. And that's been so refreshing. We're very, very grateful to have such a detailed presentation of the material that you've worked on in a site that, as you said, has already been worked on so often. I noticed in one of your pictures you sort of had a little bit bracketed off as McAllister's filling in and so on. It must be a nightmare to get so much detail out of such a work site, but you've done that and you've presented it to us in an attractive way. And on behalf of us all, may I say thank you very much, and we look forward to further work and publication as it becomes available. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you very much, Hugh. And again, on behalf of us all, thank you very much, Stephen, for a wonderful presentation, and for putting up with the storm and all the other issues. So thank you very much indeed. And we do look forward very much to hearing more about the excavation. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you all.